أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا واللعنة دائمة على أعدائهم ومنكري فضائلهم وغاصبي حق حقوقهم من يوم عداوتهم إلى لقاء يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولله على الناس حج البيت من استطاع إليه سبيلا آمنت بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Recite one salawat for me, please. Is it just a tap? Right. Eroshinic. Slide. There we go. Ahsantum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. All praise belongs to Him and to Him alone. The presentation this morning of mine is a little different from what we have done in the past. For those of you who were able to listen in to last year's presentation or perhaps even an earlier presentation, generally what we do in this section of the program is to cover the masail of Hajj in a little bit of depth in order to give you some preparation before you arrive at the Blessed Lands. This year we thought, because in the interest of time, the program sometimes gets too long, we thought we would try to restrict the session to be a Q&A session. And we're hoping that everybody would have had an opportunity to listen to last year's seminar and listen to this Masail session without me necessarily having to repeat the entire hour and a half. Nonetheless, as Habiba has mentioned, we cover this again in Medina and then also in Makkah, inshallah. So what I intend to do, inshallah, is even though from the show of hands, I realize that only 4 or 5 people have actually had a chance to listen to the seminar, it will actually make it a little bit of a challenge to do a Q&A if you haven't actually had a chance to listen to the seminar. But inshallah, we try. I'm not going to switch back to the format of delivering the entire masail because that wasn't something that I had planned to do today. But we'll cover some of the masail as we go through Q&A. Let me start off by first saying that I saw by show of hands when Sheikh Jafar asked the question, how many of us are going for the very first time? MashaAllah, a good majority of the crowd going for the first time. A blessed opportunity, for sure. Second question, can I ask how many are muqallideen of Sayyid Sistani? Okay, majority. Muqallideen of the Rahbar, Sayyid Khamenei? Okay. How many muqallideen of Sayyid al-Khui? Left, okay. Agha Khomeini, rahmatullah alayhi? Okay. I got one email that there is a muqallid of Ayatollah Hafiz Bashir Najafi as well. Anybody else in the audience who is also a muqallid of Ayatollah Hafiz Bashir? No. Okay. So there's one brother in Fort McMurray who is a muqallid of Agha. How many have performed Umrah before? Okay, so even though you may be going for Hajj for the very first time, many of you have performed Umrah before, which is helpful because the first section of Hajj is very similar. And even in the Hajj Tamattu portion, there are a lot of similarities to Umrah. I believe we also have a ladies' masail session. I think we're going to have one again sometime in the month of August. The session, the masail will cover is the general masail, but there are some specific masail that pertain to women, particularly as it pertains to their time of the month. And so there is a session that will be tackled for ladies alone, I think by Sabir Bhai and perhaps Tahir Bhai Kasmali, and these masail will then be covered in that session. But there will be scholars available in the event that there is a situation that arises that we need to deal with in Medina or Makkah, inshallah. So as I said, the focus of today's session will inshallah be on Q&A. And what I have done in anticipation of there being silence from the audience is if there are no questions from the audience, then I will ask questions and use that as an opportunity to cover some of the key things that I wish to cover, inshallah, in the session today. So there are certain requirements that make Hajj wajib on an individual. First of which is one has to be an adult. Okay, Hajj does not become wajib until you become mature, baligh or baligha. You need to be sane in order for Hajj to be wajib on you. And then there are certain requirements that are broadly categorized as freedom and financial ability. And by that we mean that you have to have enough time to go for Hajj. You need to have the physical health and strength to be able to go for Hajj. If you're not physically able to go for Hajj, even if you're young, then Hajj is not wajib on an individual. There has to be no obstruction to go for Hajj. In these days, there generally is no obstruction. You have to be able to meet the financial expenses for the journey. Okay, but not only that, you have to be able to meet your financial obligations when you come back. Meaning that if you risk losing your job, for example, because you're going to be away for 3 weeks, then Hajj is not wajib on you, because you have to have the ability and the means to provide for your family upon your return. But there are two other things that I want to mention. One is very important because it is an issue that we face every year in Hajj, and that is khums obligations. One of the requirements before you go for Hajj is that you must fulfill your khums obligations before departure. Okay, so if you have a khums obligation, right, please try to resolve your khums obligation here before you go. When we arrive in Medina, we have had several instances where people come and say, I forgot, because we cover this same material again, I never got a chance. Then it is a challenge. We have representatives of the various maraja in Medina, and we have to scramble before we leave for Hajj to either pay them there. Sometimes people don't have the money to pay them. Sometimes we have to make special arrangements, etc. We say this every year, and every year there's someone who has forgotten to pay their khums, right? Please fulfill your khums obligations here. We have instances of people who have never paid khums before. It becomes tricky when you have never paid khums before, and then 2 days before we're leaving, or the day before we're leaving, you have a problem because you have not settled your khums. Okay, so if you have any of those issues, there are scholars here in Toronto. Please address your khums obligations before departure. We have a month plus before we leave. Please do tackle those obligations. Second, if you have long-term debt, this is a question that often comes up. If you have, because one of the requirements is that you should have no obligation to others. Long-term debt is an exception, meaning that if you have a mortgage, which most of us do, and it's a long-term obligation, you're allowed to perform Hajj even if you have that long-term debt obligation, as long as you're paying your monthly mortgage payments, right? Even if you have a debt owing to another individual, but it's a long-term debt, someone you owe some money to, and you've agreed that you're going to pay him or her over 12 months, 24 months, and you're faithfully making those monthly obligations, then you're fine. Okay, but otherwise, if you owe someone, $100 or $50 or whatever it is, fulfill all of your obligations before you depart. Okay, that is one of the requirements of Hajj. Okay, now Hajj is broken into two sections or into two parts. The first is Umrah Tamattu. Okay, there are how many obligations in Umrah Tamattu? Five. Good. And the 5 obligations are? Ahsantum. 5 obligations. Okay. Ihram, the performing of Tawaf, the 2 rakat salat that follows Tawaf, sa'i, which is going back and forth between the mountains of Safa and Marwa, and then taqsir. Okay, so I do have a couple of things that I want to talk about specifically as far as ihram is concerned. Ihram has to be worn in a specific place, okay? And that place where ihram is worn is called miqat, okay? The direction from which you enter the city, or blessed city of Mecca, determines the miqat, or the place in which or from which you will wear your ihram. We will, inshallah, all of us enter the city of Mecca through Medina, okay? And so there is a designated place from which we shall, inshallah, wear our ihram, and that is Masjid al-Shajara. Masjid al-Shajara, okay? So that is the recommended place from which we will wear our ihram. Now, when we say wear our ihram, it means that we will do our ghusl, the mustahab ghusl in the hotel. We will wear the clothes of our ihram in the hotel. But the niyat itself will be performed in Masjid al-Shajara. Okay? Because practically it's not feasible for us to all do ghusl and wear ihram in Masjid al-Shajara. So we will do all of that and then board the buses, but we will not be in the state of ihram. We will just be wearing those clothes of ihram until we arrive in Shajara, and then we will do our niyyah. Now, there are three requirements for ihram. One is the garments, the clothes of ihram. Okay. Second is the niyyah that we perform for ihram, and the third is the recitation of a phrase called talbiyah. Okay. So as far as the garments of ihram are concerned, are there any questions on the garments of ihram? Yes. So the answer to that question is for men, the clothes of ihram can be purchased in Medina. I'm going to restrict the questions to fiqh-related questions, but the answer to that question is yes. For men, ihram can be purchased in Medina, not a problem. For ladies, generally, they take their clothes from here because it's more convenient and practical to do it from here. There, I'm not sure if ladies can even purchase their ihram. However, so question, for ladies' ihram, true or false? Can a lady wear any clothes as her clothes of ihram even if it is silk? False. And the reason why it's false is because of silk. So as far as ihram for ladies is concerned, they can wear anything. Okay? The exception is silk, gold, leather, etc. But as far as ladies are concerned, anything that they wear is considered to be ihram. For men, are men allowed to wear any stitched clothes in ihram? Okay. So the only pieces of cloth that men wear are the two pieces of white unstitched cloth. One is the shoulder cloth and one is the loin cloth. And again, we will demonstrate the wearing of ihram, inshallah, in Medina. The other requirement for the garments of ihram is that they must be free of najasat at all times. Okay? If at any point your ihram becomes najis, not dirty. Dirty is not the same as najis. If your clothes become najis at any time, then the obligation is that it must be changed as quickly as possible. Okay. I want to stop here and talk a little bit about this because for the vast majority of us, it is the first Hajj. But there are some people in the crowd who never raise their hands, which means that it is their nth Hajj. If it is your first Hajj, the manner in which you will do your niyyah is that in the case of this first ritual, is that I am wearing my ihram for Umrah Tamattu, for Hajjatul Islam, wajib qurbatan ilallah. Okay? This formula or this approach of performing your niyyah is then repeated in every one of the rituals. I'm not going to repeat it again. Okay, so you are performing this ritual for Umrah Tamattu, for Hajjatul Islam, wajib qurbatan ilallah. And when we come to Hajj, I'll show you one more niyyah, inshallah, and then it's the same format. Now, as far as niyyah is concerned, like in every other wajib action, niyyah is not something that must be verbally pronounced. Okay, as long as you are consciously aware of what you are about to perform, that is niyyah. The intention must be there that now you are wearing ihram for Umrah. Okay? As long as that intention is present, the niyyah is performed. Okay, so if you don't necessarily verbally pronounce your niyyah, that's okay. But make sure that you are consciously aware of the rituals you're about to embark upon at every point in time. For those who are performing Hajj for the second time or third time, there are two scenarios. Okay, so for those who are performing Hajj for the very first time, and this is your wajib Hajj, you cannot perform Hajj for anybody else other than yourself. This is a Hajj that is your wajib Hajj and is being performed only for yourself. That's it. If you are performing a Hajj, as I said, for the nth time, you have two scenarios. Either you're doing it for yourself, or you're doing it for the thawab of someone else. If you're doing it for yourself, then the niyyah is that I am wearing ihram for umrah tamattu, for hajj tamattu, qurbatan ilallah. Okay, it's not hajjatul Islam, hajj tamattu. Or the third scenario is that, I have performed Hajj once, or maybe more than once. This time I want to perform Hajj for the thawab of my grandfather, my grandmother, whatever the case may be. Then you would say that I am wearing ihram for umrah tamattu, for hajj tamattu, for the thawab of so-and-so. And that so-and-so could be a list of 20 people. It doesn't have to be one individual. Okay, so if you are performing Hajj niyabatan for someone else or for the thawab of someone else, you can have as many people on the list as you'd like, but that list becomes fixed once you start. You can't keep adding people to the list. Okay, so decide on the list from now if you are performing Hajj for the nth time and you want to dedicate the thawab of this Hajj for several of your marhumin or even for your parents who, let's say, who may be alive, then you can do so. But make that list from now. Ji. Bol. Yes, we'll tackle them now.
So, first question is, if somebody has qaza fast,
yes,
or qaza mannat fast, do they have to complete before the
question. If someone has qada fasts, do they have to necessarily fulfill that obligation before they go for Hajj? No. They obviously qada fasts need to be fulfilled as quickly as possible, but you don't necessarily have to fulfill those fasts before you go for Hajj.
Okay, second question. As it relates to Khums obligation, do we just need to be current as of our latest Khums date? Or if we are paid through at Khums date, December 31st, do we need to pay anything before departure for Hajj?
Right, that's a good question. That one also comes up every year. So, if your Khums date, okay, everybody has an annual Khums date. If your Khums date is December 31, as the example said, then as long as you have fulfilled your Khums obligations as of December 31, 2015, you're good. Because you do not have another Khums obligation until December 31, 2016. So even though we're departing at the end of August, you don't have to proportionally calculate and figure out how much you owe. As long as you are current, December 31, 2015 obligations are met, you don't have another Khums obligation until December 31, 2016. Okay? Okay. Yes. Yes, if you have any zakat obligations, and the vast majority of us, based on the rules of zakat these days in terms of which commodities zakat is payable on, most of us do not have a zakat obligation on an ongoing basis, right? At least for those of us who live in this part of the world and in sort of urban cities. We don't have an obligation on the various commodities that are generally on which zakat is generally payable. Okay. Yes.
So, the creed of Ayatollah Sistani, and as per my understanding, one cannot do sajda in Masjid al-Nabi and Kaaba on carpet.
Yes.
So,
right. So we'll cover inshallah that. So the question was, as far as sajda is concerned on carpet, how do we perform sajda when we get to the Haramain? Inshallah, we'll cover that. Yes. I'll answer the question. Let's just keep the questions to what I've covered so far, because I have all of the material to cover, and inshallah, some of the questions will inshallah get answered, and if they don't get answered, then inshallah I'll address them. Yes. Walaikum salam.
On the
Ihram.
Ihram was to get najis. You don't have to go back to miqat to wear it again. You can just wear it there. Right?
Good question. If your ihram gets najis, do you have to go back to the miqat to change the ihram? No, but you have the obligation to change the ihram immediately.
my question is, when you do niyyah, and
Ji.
you are doing the
Hajj first time,
Yes.
can you do the niyyah for yourself and the marhumin, or just like?
So the question was, if you are doing Hajj for the first time, can you do the niyyah for this Hajj to be for yourself and other marhumin? No. If this is your first Hajj and it's your wajib Hajj, it is exclusively for yourself and nobody else. Inshallah, you'll be blessed with an opportunity to come back. However, if once Hajj is completed, your wajib Hajj is completed, and if we have time at the end, depending on how many days we have left, you can perform an umrah for the thawab of your marhumin if we have enough time. Okay, and generally people do try to get their Hajj completed so that they can get one umrah done. Especially those who are coming for Hajj for the very first time, they want to do umrah for others. But if this is your first wajib Hajj, it is only for yourself. Okay, talbiyah. Okay, the third requirement for ihram is the recitation of talbiyah, which is this phrase, labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika laka labbaik, innal hamda wan ni'mata laka wal mulk la sharika lak, labbaik. Okay, this phrase is recited as soon as niyyah is recited in Masjid al-Shajara. This phrase is equivalent to takbiratul ihram in salat. Okay, when you do your niyyah, when you're standing up for salat, and you do your takbiratul ihram, that first Allahu Akbar, okay, after which now salat begins. This recitation of talbiyah is like that. As soon as you recite this phrase, once your niyyah is done, then there are 25 things that become haram on you because you're now in the state of ihram. Now you are technically in the state of ihram. Before you were just wearing the clothes. Okay, it was like you wearing any other clothes. Now you have done your niyyah, you've recited the talbiyah, you are now in ihram. Okay. So, generally we spend a fair bit of time going over the muharramat, those 25 things that are haram while in the state of ihram. Questions? For those of you who may not necessarily have listened to the presentation, but may have read any material on the muharramat relating to ihram. Any questions? Yes.
If you're traveling during the day as a man, you can travel in sheltered vehicles, but is that only from the miqat to the haram, or is that also within the city itself?
Okay, good question. One of the prohibitions in the state of ihram is not being able to travel under the sun, or in the case of, or even when it's raining. Okay, this is a requirement that is not relevant for ladies or for children or for seniors. Okay, it is a requirement for men. Okay, able-bodied men. According to Muqallid of Sayyid Sistani, okay, according to Ayatollah Sistani, we cannot travel under the when it's sunny, when it's raining, under a sheltered bus or under a shelter. This requirement is throughout the state of ihram. Okay, so that is the reason why when we leave Masjid al-Shajara, we leave at night after Maghrib, because the requirement is only traveling when it's sunny, or the restriction is only when it's sunny. At night there is no sun. The only issue is that if it rains, then we have a problem. Okay, well, generally we have not had that situation. When you are when you are stopped at your destination, whether it is at the hotel or whether it is in the tents of Arafah, then being under shelter is okay. It's only, the restriction is only while traveling. You cannot travel under a sheltered bus. If you're walking, there's no problem. But you cannot take the shade of an umbrella, for example, when you're walking. But if you're walking and there's a shadow of a building, that's okay. For Muqallid of Sayyid al-Khu'i, we have a little bit of a challenge, because Sayyid al-Khu'i, you could not travel in a sheltered bus, period. The ability of being able to get open buses is not there anymore, and so inevitably there will be a kafara for those men who are still muqallideen of Sayyid al-Khu'i, rahmatullah alayhi.
The city limits of Makkah, because Sayyid al-Khui's city limit is very
Yes.
limited, because now the city has expanded. Now I don't know where the hotel is situated.
Yes, good question. I was going to cover that, but I'll answer that question right now, because you're the only muqallid of Sayyid al-Khu'i. Our hotels, both in Makkatul Mukarrama and Madinatul Munawwara, are both literally 5 to 7 minute walk from Haram. So there's no issue. Sayyid al-Khuwayi considered Aziziyah to be outside Makkah, but we don't stay in Aziziyah anymore, so there's not an issue. For all Muqalladeen of Sayyid Sistani, Sayyid al-Khuwayi, we are within the boundaries of city of Makkah and Medina. There was another question. Yes?
I had a question around the requirement for traveling under a shed.
Yeah.
Do you know what the significance of that?
Yeah, so the question was, what is the significance for traveling under the shade? So if you don't mind, let me and you and I talk about that after, only because I have a lot of ground to cover in terms of fiqh masail. And any questions, I'll be here after. If there are any questions like that we tackle, inshallah, we'll tackle them as well. Yes?
If the hair from the body is accidentally noticed,
Yes, good question. If falling of hair is one of the, or removal of hair is one of the restrictions in Ihram. If your hair falls unintentionally, for example, you're doing wudu, right? And for men, for example, if the hair falls off from the beard, okay? Or if you're taking a shower and your hair falls off from your head unintentionally, there's no problem. Okay? It's only the intentional removal of hair that is a restriction, not unintentional. Okay? Wearing of jewelry. Both men and women are allowed to wear jewelry. True or false? Hands, show by hands. True?
It depends.
Depends. Nay, true or false? True or false? For women, your ordinary jewelry, your regular jewelry that you wear all the time, okay, which you don't wear necessarily as a means of adornment or beautification, is allowed. Okay, so if you wear, let's say, a necklace all the time, year round you wear the necklace, then in Ihram you can wear it. There's no problem. Okay. Anything that you wear, any jewelry that you wear as a means of beautification, if you're wearing a watch, an expensive watch, and it's really intended to show your status, right? That is adornment. That is beautification. You're not allowed to beautify yourself in the state of Ihram. Okay? The objective in Ihram is simplicity. And so even for men, we generally remove all any adornments that you have. Generally, aqiq ring, for those who wear an aqiq ring on an ongoing basis, if you wish to wear your aqiq ring, there is no problem with wearing your aqiq ring in Ihram. But you'll find many who even wear aqiq ring throughout the year will take everything off, because the objective is simplicity. Men, so we talked about traveling in shelter. In terms of covering of the head, okay, men are not allowed to cover their head in the state of Ihram. Okay, so when we're talking about the two pieces of cloth, there's no hat, there's nothing. Okay, despite the fact that it's extremely hot in those days. Yes, in these days.
What about in the state of Ihram, you have to take a wajib ghusl or something? Can you wipe up your head with a towel?
So if you have a situation where you have a wajib ghusl in the state of Ihram, you can wipe your head, but you cannot cover your entire head. So you can wipe your head, there's no problem. Okay. Any other questions with regard to the prohibitions in Ihram? Yes.
you can't use scented soap or
Yes. One of the muharramat of Hajj is the use of perfume. Okay. And by perfume, we mean anything that is scented. So whether it's scented deodorant or scented soap. And that is the reason why one of your, I don't know if we've sent this list of things to take with you, but on this list generally is unscented soap. Okay, and the reason why you use this unscented soap is that you will shower with unscented soap when you do your ghusl, so that there's no lingering fragrance on the body, because one of the requirements of Ihram is that you should not be using perfume. Throughout the state of Ihram, you cannot use any fragrance. You cannot enjoy any aroma either. Okay, so our Indian foods generally have this aroma. You can eat or you can eat fruits that have the aroma to them, but the intention should not be to enjoy the aroma of the food. I mean, our foods generally tend to smell like they do, and so there's no issue with that. But you shouldn't necessarily be enjoying the odor. Yes.
So one of the items I think that's prohibited is some
Correct.
What about say dry sunscreen or something?
So one of the questions, the question was, you are not allowed to apply oil, an oily substance to yourself while in the state of ihram. So that is correct. One of the requirements is that you cannot apply any oily substance on yourself. The exception to that rule is that if you have to apply it for medical reasons, okay? Medical reasons not being preventative, okay? You can't apply something in anticipation of something happening, okay? If you have a medical condition already in existence that requires that medical treatment, whether it's an ointment or a cream of some sort, then that's okay. But you can't apply it because you think you might need it. Okay. So, for example, for men, because of the extreme heat and the sweat in those conditions, sometimes men have chafing between their legs. Okay. Now, you can't apply something because you are concerned that you might have that chafing between the legs. But if you face that condition, where let's say after one day in Arafah, your thighs are really sore because of the rubbing between the legs, then yes, you can apply because now you have a condition that requires it. But you can't apply it in anticipation that I might get this, because sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Okay. Any other questions? Yes. So repeat that again. Hand sanitizer. Can you use hand sanitizer? No. Okay. You cannot use hand sanitizer because the same rule applies as far as it being a sort of an oily substance that I know you can get fragrance-free hand sanitizers, but you cannot use them. Yes.
Sheltering in shaded places, is that just a traveling thing that is not?
Sheltering in shaded places, yeah. So sheltering in shaded places is only while traveling. The constraint is okay. Otherwise, taking shelter in the state of ihram is not problematic, regardless of whose muqallid you are or whether you are male or female. So when we arrive at our destination, whether it is in the hotel or in Arafat, we're under tents. We're in sheltered places. Okay. So we will leave Masjid al-Shajara, we will head towards Makkah. It's a 4 to 5 hour journey. Typically in Hajj circumstances, it could be 6, it could be 8, it could be 10 hours, we don't know. We tried the best we can to try to get Hujjaj to Makkah as quickly as possible and tried to get their Umrah done before Salatul Fajr. But depending on traffic, depending on logistics, etc., a lot of which is outside our control, we'll inshallah do the best we can. And so we will arrive inshallah at Makkah. This is a really old picture. They used to have, for a few years, they had ramps around the Kaaba as they were doing some construction, but I hear this year the ramps have come down, and so hopefully we'll get a clear sight of the Kaaba inshallah as we're walking in. Last few years has been difficult because there was a lot of obstruction while the construction was going on. Tawaf. There are 5 obligations or 5 conditions for Tawaf, very quickly. The niyyah for Tawaf, the tahara, and there are 2 kinds of tahara for Tawaf. One is that there has to be a ritual purity, the other one there has to be a physical purity. By ritual purity we mean you must be in the state of wudu. Okay? There are 2 obligations for which you must be in wudu. One is Tawaf and the other is Salatul Tawaf. Okay? Whichever Tawaf you do, whether it is this one or in Hajj, the Hajj Tamattu portion, the Tawaf and the 2 rakat namaz must always be in wudu. Okay, other rituals you don't have to be in wudu. For men, obviously circumcision is a requirement of Tawaf, and number 2, obviously covering one's private parts while in the state of while performing Tawaf. Niyyah, we have covered this. I've just shown one more slide of niyyah. Depending on which circumstance applies to yourself, the niyyah can be performed accordingly. Now, there are 8 obligations for the performing of Tawaf itself. Any questions on those? Very quickly, the round starts with Hajar, ends with Hajar. Hajar al-Aswad, the black stone. Okay, that's where the round begins, that's where it ends. You go around the Kaaba 7 times. The left shoulder must be pointing towards the Kaaba at all times. You should keep clear of the Kaaba and not move your hands on the Kaaba and touch it as you go around the Kaaba doing Tawaf. You go around 7 times. It must be performed without a significant interruption, the 7 entire rounds. And it must be performed free of movement, meaning that you actually have to be walking on the ground when you're performing your tawaf, unless you have a situation where, let's say, you are in a wheelchair or whatever. Wheelchair is difficult these days because of the rush in Hajj. They don't let you come down in a wheelchair on the main floor of tawaf. Questions? If not, I have a few. Yes?
Is there a certain distance you can't be away from?
Yes. Good question. The recommendation is that, the question, yes. The question was, is there a distance from the Kaaba that you should be or shouldn't be? Is that the question? Yeah, okay. So it is highly recommended, it's mustahab, to perform your tawaf between the Kaaba and Maqam of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Okay? That is the required, or that is the recommendation. If you are unable to perform your tawaf because it's busy in that small area. If you're unable to perform your tawaf in that small ambit and you have to perform it outside maqam, that's okay. It's not wajib to perform it, but highly recommend to perform it in that ambit. And it's possible. It's possible to do. Also remember that the further away you are from the Kaaba, the longer the round and the longer the tawaf takes. If you're performing your tawaf between the Kaaba and maqam, depending on how busy it is, 35 to 55 minutes. Okay, 7 rounds. Okay, if you're further away, depending on how far you are and how busy it is, it could take much longer.
Is there any time restriction, like when you do tawaf?
Is there any time restriction in terms of how long you should take?
No, like when you can take that, when you do the tawaf.
Yes. Oh, so the question is there a restriction in terms of when you can do tawaf? No, you can do tawaf at any time. That you want, there's no problem. The only one challenge becomes that, okay, if time for salat is setting in and you are in the middle of your tawaf, what happens? Because there are rules related to that. Generally, the rule is that if you are in the middle of your tawaf, and we try to recommend people not to start their tawaf if you know that it's going to be salat time in 20 minutes. Because you're not going to be able to perform your tawaf in 20 minutes. So, but if you've started your tawaf and it's taking you much longer than you anticipated and namaz time sets in and people settle down for prayer, you stop your tawaf where you are, you pray with everybody, and then you continue from where you left off. That is the rule, okay? You're allowed to interrupt your tawaf for salat, and that's one of the conditions for which you can interrupt your tawaf, and then you resume from where you left off. Yes? No, as long as you're consciously aware that you're now in the middle of tawaf, you're going to resume your tawaf again. Yes.
If somebody is handicapped on a wheelchair and they're not allowed to do tawaf in the main stand, can they go up and do that?
Question. So the question was, if someone is handicapped and they are unable to perform their tawaf themselves on the ground floor, and we can't take them on a wheelchair on the main floor, it is problematic because we used to have these 2 ramps, and the ramps were, one was below the Kaaba, and we could perform tawaf on a wheelchair on them. I don't know what the new floor structure looks like. In the past, we were unable to perform tawaf on the first floor or on the roof, obviously, because both of those levels were above the Kaaba. Okay? So, unless the construction is changed, I'm not sure what the new construction looks like, but if they're above the Kaaba, then no, you cannot perform tawaf even on a wheelchair because you're performing it above the Kaaba. So in that case, you're probably looking at someone to do your niyaba for you on the ground floor, because they don't, wheelchairs, because of the crowds in Hajj, they don't let wheelchairs come in. At least for Umrah, they don't let people come in on the ground floor.
If you lose track of how many times you have gone around the
Yes. Yeah, that's a common question, and it was going to be one of my questions if you didn't ask that question. So the question was, what if you lose count of where you are? Okay, so the rule of thumb is that, look, you must be certain about the number of rounds. You cannot throw in an extra round just for insurance purposes and say, well, I wasn't sure, I'll just do one more and I'm sure I've done 7. You can't do that. There has to be a certainty as to the number of rounds, okay? Now, it's not as difficult to keep a track of the rounds as people think. Despite the pressure and the crowds, etc., it's very easy to keep a track of the number of rounds. You can rely on a partner's count. So if you're with your wife or with your mother or with your sister and you're performing tawaf and you are not certain but she is certain, and she says you're not sure whether it's second or third, she knows for sure it's third, no problem. Okay, you can rely on a partner's count. And then people have their own techniques, right? You know, people move their ring from finger to finger. People recite certain surahs. Remember certain imams. Whatever the case may be, people have these beads, 7 beads, where they're keeping a track of the count. But there needs to be certainty about the number of rounds. Yes.
How strict is the rule of performing free movement when it comes to the elderly or women? So if you kind of provide support to a mother or an elderly while doing tawaf.
How strict is the rule about performing tawaf with freedom of movement? Strict. Meaning that for a senior, for example, who is unable to walk and they need a wheelchair, then that's a different situation. But if you're with your wife, okay, and it's tough for women because of the crowds and the pressure, etc., you are able to assist your wife. Let's say your wife is coming with you, okay? If you want to hold her shoulders from behind in order to guide her and help her through the crowds, there's no problem, okay? The issue becomes if she or you are lifted off the ground because of the crowds and you move a certain distance around the Kaaba off your feet, okay? That is considered to be not freedom of movement. And the way to solve that issue is that round on which a certain portion of your tawaf was off your feet does not count. You come back around the Kaaba and you resume from where you left off, regardless of which round you were on. It could be your first round, it could be your 7th round. If you were lifted off your feet, you come back and you resume from where you left off.
If you cannot maintain your wuzu during the tawaf.
Good question. If you cannot maintain your wudu, now there are 2 situations. If you have a medical condition as a result of which you are unable to maintain your wudu for an extended period of time, then we have a separate masala for that. But in general, for tawaf, there is this rule of 4, okay? If your wudu breaks, or if your clothes become najas, whether it is because of your own najasa or someone else's najasa, someone is bleeding and they touch you and your ihram becomes najas. If your wudu breaks or you became najas before completing 4 rounds of tawaf, your tawaf is null and void. You have to come out, you have to do your wudu if your wudu broke, or if your ihram became najas, you change your ihram and you come back and you start afresh. If it happened after the 4th round is complete, then you come out, you resolve the issue, do wudu or change your ihram, and you come back and you complete from where you left off. Rule of 4, okay, remember the rule of 4. If it's before 4, null and void. After 4, you come back and you resume. Okay, let's, any more questions on tawaf? Yes?
The rule regarding the left shoulder facing the Kaaba.
Yeah.
If you're pushed or nudged while you're doing the tawaf and your shoulder turns away from the Kaaba, what do you do?
Yes. So the left shoulder must at all times point towards the Kaaba, and it has to be. It's not a strict rule, meaning it doesn't have to be specifically exactly pointing towards the Kaaba. The issue, however, is that if you get disoriented because of the crowds, such that, let's say, your back is facing the Kaaba, or you're facing the Kaaba, or you're complete 180 degrees and your right shoulder is facing the Kaaba, if you move a certain distance in that disoriented position, then the same rule applies to that I mentioned earlier, which is the one where you got lifted off your feet. That portion of your tawaf does not count. You come all the way back, and the point from which you got disoriented, you resume from where you left off. Doesn't matter which round you're on. Okay, so we move on. Just a quick pictorial representation of what the Tawaf looks like. Again, the Umrah requirements, Ihram and Tawaf, After which, the next requirement is salat. Okay, the 2 rakat salat, and the 2 rakat salat is performed exactly like Fajr prayers. Any questions on the remaining 3 are very quick. The salat, sa'i, and taqsir. Any questions on those 3? Yes.
The recommended place for salat is in Maqam Ibrahim, or you can go as far as you can.
Question: where is the recommended place for salat? Recommended place for salat of tawaf for Umrah Tamattu is behind Maqam of Ibrahim alayhi salam, as close to it as possible. Okay, that is the requirement for Umrah Tamattu. If you are performing a Sunnat Tawaf, anywhere in Haram is okay. But for Wajib Tawaf, like in this case where you're part of Umrah Tamattu, behind Maqam, and there is a section, you'll find everybody praying there. Everybody praying there, you find a spot, you pray your 2 rakat, and you move on.
But if you don't get the place close,
Yeah. There's a whole section because of people performing Tawaf. Yeah, as far behind as possible, but you'll see a section, try to get as close to Maqam as possible. And because everybody is praying 2 rakat and moving, if you wait for a couple of minutes, you'll find a spot.
like if you see the Irani Hujjaj, they're going to cordon everybody. And then
But all Hajis of all stripes are reciting their salat there, so you should not have a problem finding a spot. Okay. Any other questions on salat? Okay. It must be performed immediately after tawaf. That's a requirement. You cannot wait for an extended period of time. You finish your tawaf, immediately thereafter, you perform your 2 rakat salat. Sa'i, going back and forth between the mountains of Safa and Marwa. You can have a gap. After you finish your salat, you can have a gap. You can decide to go back to the hotel if you want. Okay? But your sa'i must be performed on the same day that you performed your tawaf and your salatul tawaf. But you can have hours of gap if you wish. If you're tired, seniors, if you want to take a gap, break, you can go back and come back. No problem. Okay? Sa'i, going back and forth between Safa and Marwa 7 times between the 2 mountains. Any questions on that? Yes.
Between the 2 green parts, how quickly do you get?
Harwala. So there are 2 overhead green lights. So Safa and Marwa, one of the spiritual significances of Safa and Marwa, of Sa'i, is that there needs to be, there are various explanations given to it, but one is that there needs to be a concerted movement, like a conscious movement from the mountain of Safa to Marwa and back. One of the explanations given by scholars is that it's like the human being who is traversing his life between fear and hope. Okay, fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wrath and punishment for the sins that we have committed, and 2, hope in His mercy and His forgiveness. And so we move with a purpose in Safa and Marwa. It's not a leisurely walk. Okay, so you move with a purpose between Safa and Marwa, and under the green lights, for men, it is recommended that we move briskly. Okay, so you find people trotting in that short span from one green light to the next and in both directions. Okay, you don't have to run, but generally people move faster than the speed at which they've been walking for Sa'i. Okay, okay, yes.
When you reach one end, is it like you how do you know? Is there a way to just cross the mountain?
Okay, how do you know you've reached the end? So you'll find that there's a little bit of an incline on both sides, which signifies the mountain of Safa and the mountain of Marwa. Okay, as long as you reach a little bit of that incline and you turn around, most people what they do is there's a pillar, so they climb the incline, they go around the pillar and they go back, and that to them is sufficient. You don't have to go and we used to be able to touch the mountains. Now there's plexiglass, so some people go and touch the plexiglass. You don't have to, as long as you go up up the incline, around the pillar and back, then that's sufficient that you've reached the mountain of Safa and then back.
There's been extension now to the Safa and Marwa. Now, what are the rules?
Yeah. So I was going to cover that, inshallah, if we get a chance to be in Medina together. But the rule is this. So first of all, there are multiple floors of Safa Marwa. The same rule applies, as we said, for the Kaaba. If the level is above the Kaaba, which is the first floor and the second floor, you cannot perform Safa Marwa on them. The main floor and the basement is the only place where you can perform Safa Marwa. On the main floor, they have extended the area such that when you're going from Safa to Marwa, they've extended outwards the Haram. that outward portion is outside the ambit of Safa and Marwa. So when you're going from Safa to Marwa, if you're on the main floor, you stick to the left-hand side, which is the middle lane. Okay, close to the middle lane, going from Safa to Marwa. Marwa to Safa, no problem. Okay, so on the ground floor, when going from Safa to Marwa, you stick to the middle of the that lane, close to the wheelchair lane. Okay, 7 rounds means Safa to Marwa 1, Marwa to Safa 2. Okay, not Safa, Marwa, Marwa, Safa. That's not 1, that's 2. Okay, so go to Safa to Marwa, and that's 1, and then Marwa to Safa, just back is the second. Taqsir. Clipping, yes.
Just a question on Sa'i.
Ji.
Elderly, can you take a pause in between rounds?
Yeah, so just the rule for Sa'i is the same as the rule for Tawaf, meaning that you can take a break, but there cannot be a significant break. So if when you're doing Safa Marwa, when you're doing Sa'i, there are places where you can stop for Zamzam. Okay, so if you choose, you can take a break. It's a long walk. It's a 3.5 kilometer walk. Okay, this entire 7 rounds. You can choose to break for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, take some water, rest, and then continue on. But if I were to come by, I mean, you can't be sitting there for an hour, because if I were to observe you, I should have a sense that you're still in the middle of Sa'i. Okay, you're not just sitting there doing nothing. Okay, so that's the rule of thumb. They say is about 10 minutes. Okay, if you choose to take a break for about 5-10 minutes, and you could have several of these breaks. It doesn't have to be one break only. You could have several breaks. You do 2 rounds and then or 2 laps, and then you take a break. You have some water, and then you continue on. There's no problem. And for seniors, there is a wheelchair lane. If you have your mother with you and she needs assistance, then you can either pay someone to push the wheelchair, or you can push the wheelchair for him or her, depending on who you have with you, and there's no problem. Okay, and you can choose to take a break if you wish to. Taqsir, clipping of the hair or the nails, recommended that you clip the hair as opposed to the nails. You can do nails as well. It doesn't have to be done right on the mountain of Marwa. You can go back to the hotel and do it. Once you've clipped your hair, Umrah Tamattu is finished. The 25 Muharramat that we've talked about are all lifted. Okay, now we are in the city of Makkah for 5, 6, 7 days, and we have no obligations until Hajj Tamattu begins. And in these 6, 7 days, you cannot perform Umrah. Umrah can only be performed after Hajj is finished, because you are in the middle of your Hajj. Okay, but you can perform Sunnat Tawaf. Okay, if you want to perform Tawaf for your marhumin, Tawaf means 7 rounds around the Kaaba plus 2 rakat salat, and you can perform as many of those as you wish for as many people as you wish. Okay, quickly then, Hajj will be quicker because a lot of this is repeated. The Hajj Tamattu has 13 arkan, 13 rituals, starting with Ihram and all the way to Mabit and Rami on the 11th and 12th of Dhul Hijjah. The Niyyah that is performed when you are wearing Ihram for Hajj Tamattu is that you are wearing your Ihram now for Hajjatul Islam, Wajib, Qurbatan Ilallah, and this same format of Niyyah then continues for the remaining 13 rituals that we are about to perform for Hajj Tamattu. So you wear your Ihram. Where is the miqat for wearing Ihram for Hajj Tamattu? Masjidun? Masjid Aisha. Any other answers? Masjidul Haram. The miqat for wearing Ihram for Hajj is Makkah. Okay, you can wear it anywhere in Makkah. You can wear it in the hotel if you wish. Okay, Masjid Aisha, Masjid Tan'im is the masjid we go to if you wish to perform Umrah after Hajj. That is where you go and wear your Ihram. It's about a 15-minute drive from where our hotel is, depending on traffic. So while the requirement for wearing Ihram is Makkah, it is highly recommended to wear it in Masjid al-Haram. Okay, and we are literally 5-7 minute walk from Masjid al-Haram, and so we recommend everybody to go to the Haram, do your niyyah. You wear your clothes in obviously the hotel, you walk to the Haram, you do your niyyah there. Recommended to recite 2 rakat salat behind Maqam of Ibrahim alayhi salam, mustahab, and you recite do your niyyah, you do your talbiyah, just as you did when you wore your ihram for umrah, and you are now technically back in ihram, and those 25 muharramat that we talked about earlier, the same list applies, and you are now in the state of ihram, and all of these prohibitions are in place. We will then leave for the two wuquf. One is the wuquf at Arafah, and the second is the wuquf at Muzdalifah or Mash'ar. Okay, they're known synonymously. So, wuquf at Arafah. Any questions? Al-Hajju Arafah, as Sheikh Jafar said. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has said, Al-Hajj Arafah. The Prophet says the climax of Hajj. Hajj, the Prophet says, is Arafah. This short window of time from Dhuhr till sunset or Maghrib is what Hajj is all about. It's the climax of Hajj, that one afternoon, the prime time. This is why Sheikh Jafar, particularly pointed out sleep and rest before, because it's really tiring and exhausting, and there are lots of heat, and so people get tired. So rest so that you are able to stay awake for the prime time event, which is the afternoon of Arafah on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah. After Arafah, we go to Muzdalifah. This is where we will pick our pebbles, and the requirement there is to spend a portion of the night in Muzdalifah. Women are allowed to leave early, but men, able-bodied men, are required to stay in Muzdalifah until sunrise. Okay, so we will stay in Muzdalifah until sunrise, and then we will make a move towards Mina. In Mina, yes. Okay, I'll answer that question. So the question was, how will we move from Arafah to Muzdalifah? By bus, all of us. Yes. Where will Maghribain Salat be recited on that night of the 10th of Dhul Hijjah? It is recommended to be recited in Muzdalifah. Okay. However, because there is a huge number of people that are moving from Arafah to Muzdalifah, we are assigned bus numbers. Depending on what bus number we get assigned, if our bus number is very late, then there's no point in delaying Maghribain Salat until we arrive Muzdalifah, because we don't know how long it'll be. We pray in Arafah. But if we're early enough, we'll leave and pray in Muzdalifah, inshallah. On the day of Eid, there are three requirements. Sorry, yes. Muzdalifah to Mina, generally we walk. Okay, we've taken buses in the past, but logistically it seems to have made more sense for us to walk from Muzdalifah to Mina, inshallah. On the day of Eid, there are three requirements. First is Rami, which is stoning of the shaitan. 2 is Qurbani, which is the slaughtering of the animal. And 3 is Halaq, or in the cases of ladies, Taqsir, which is clipping of the hair. Rami, stoning the shaitan. On that day, we're only stoning one of the shaitans. We have picked our 70 pebbles in Muzdalifah. We're now in Mina. The first thing we do is we'll walk to the Jamarat, and we'll stone the last of the 3 Jamarat, and that's the only one. All of us, all Shias, Sunnis, all of us just stoned the one on the first day. And then we come back, and the ladies will sit in the tents awaiting word that their Qurbani has been done. For men, our group, we tend to take Hujjaj to perform their own Qurbani, which most groups don't. We will perform our own Qurbani, inshallah, and then come back and do our halaq. In the case of men, this is when we shave our heads. In the case of women, once you get word that your Qurbani is done, you clip your hair, and the 3 obligations for Eid day are completed. Any questions? Yes. Yes. Yeah, good question. So we will tackle that there, but there are, the question was, what do we do with the meat? The obligation for meat is that it needs to be split in 3. A third for yourself, a third for mu'mineen, and a third for sadaqah. Okay, and we make the necessary arrangements when we get there in terms of how the meat is allocated and distributed. We don't have to worry about it there, because it's all looked after for us.
For the sadaqah portion, do you have to get pre-approval of pre?
Yeah, so not necessary.
It's difficult to find sadaqah.
Yeah, actually. Do we need to take permission and sort out the sadaqah portion from here before we leave, because it is difficult to find fuqara over there? The answer is no. It's all possible to look after. Yes.
Are you still in the state of Ihram when you're doing this Qurbani?
Are you still in the state of Ihram when you're doing the Qurbani? The answer is yes. Okay, so,
When you're slaughtering?
right, good question. If you're slaughtering an animal and the blood splashes over your Ihram or yourself, for example, the obligation is to change your Ihram as quickly as possible. So this applies only for us men who are actually going for Qurbani, okay? Immediately after the Qurbani, we're headed back to the tents to do our halaq, and after halaq, Ihram clothes are off. Okay, so generally, actually, for the most part, we've been doing it for many years. The blood doesn't splash that much. Okay, unless the goat is out of control, in which case then the blood splashes. But generally, you're able to do Qurbani without blood splashing on yourself or even on the Ihram. In the event that it does, because you're going back to the tents to do halaq, Ihram is off after that anyway, so there's no problem. Okay, okay. So after. This is what, by the way, what the pillar looks like. It isn't a small pillar anymore. It's a huge wall on which you are performing your jamarat. The obligation is to throw 7 pebbles. We'll cover all of that in detail there. And the 7 pebbles must strike. You must see them strike with certainty. And there are obligations in terms of trying to get it to the middle of the pillar as best you can. And inshallah, we'll cover that in terms of how best to logistically do that when we get there. Ji.
I have a question about Qurbani. So if you're going with the family, so you have to do Qurbani for every individual, or it's just once should be enough for the whole class?
Question: if you are going for Hajj with the family, is the requirement that the Qurbani must be performed for the family or for the individual? Qurbani is performed by individual, because each individual has the Qurbani obligation in Hajj. However, the cost of Qurbani is covered in this cost of the package that we have. For the ladies, they will have volunteers who will go and perform Qurbani on their behalf. Men, for those who are able to, will go and do their own Qurbani. If you're not able to, then someone will perform it on your behalf. Yes?
Do you only throw 1 pebble at a time, or do you take a handful?
Do you throw only 1 pebble at a time, or do you throw a handful? You throw 1 at a time because you need certainty that all 7 struck. Okay. Yeah. As Inayat Bhai is saying, the wall is so big you can't miss. But as Sheikh Jafar said, when smoking is the only one that tends to is a curveball, right? Yeah. Ji. No. Question: can you do Qurbani on behalf of the ladies who are with you? If you are coming for Qurbani with the men, logistically the answer is no. Only because it's just the amount of effort involved in getting the Qurbani done is too significant. That we only, for those who are coming with the group that is going to do their own Qurbani, you're only allowed to do your own Qurbani. Everybody else's Qurbani, whether it's your wife or your daughter or your mother or your sister or whatever, is being looked after, because it's just very difficult for us to manage otherwise. Okay, we move on. After the day of Eid, there are still a few obligations that need to be fulfilled. Tawaf of Hajj, the 2 rakat salat, Sa'i again, Tawaf al-Nisa, and 2 rakat salat of Tawaf al-Nisa. Any questions on these 5 rituals? Yes? Right, good question. So after the day of Eid, if those 3 obligations have been completed, okay, and the requirement is that these 3 obligations must be completed, not necessarily the day of Eid being completed, but these 3 obligations will be completed, because there have been occasions where, for logistical reasons, Qurbani has not been done in time, in which case you are still in Ihram. After Halaq, Ihram is off, but there are 3 restrictions that remain. Out of 25, 3 remain. 1, perfume. 2, intimacy with your spouse. And 3, hunting. Those 3 remain, okay? So the clothes of Ihram are off. You're wearing your regular clothes, whatever it is that you want to wear, shirt and pants, or a dishdasha like this, or whatever you want to wear, whatever you're comfortable with. That's the clothes you're in. The only requirement is no perfume while you're in that state at this point in time. When you're performing these 5 rituals, you're performing them in regular clothes. Unless you want to continue wearing Ihram, you can, but there's no requirement to do so. Having completed Tawaf and Salat of Tawaf, okay, and sa'i. Sorry, yes, and sa'i. Okay, you have to perform these 3 rituals. After performing these 3 rituals, the restriction on fragrance is lifted. Okay, and then the Tawaf al-Nisa and Salat of Tawaf, once you perform those 2 rituals, and the intimacy restriction is lifted. Hunting just gets automatically lifted on the 13th of Dhul Hijjah. Okay, yes? No. Question, do these rituals have to be done on Eid day? These rituals can be done at any time before departure. Okay, you can choose to do it at any point, really. There's no requirement to do them at a specific point in time. The only thing to remember is that for as long as you have not completed these rituals, the restrictions that remain. So use of fragrance is not permitted until sa'i is completed. Okay, and these have to be performed in this sequence. Okay, and intimacy with one's spouse is not lifted until Tawaf al-Nisa and the 2 rakat salat is recited. Now, for logistical reasons, the group will recommend when best it is to perform these rituals because of experience that we've had over the years. But technically, it can be done at any time.
Not to embarrass anyone, but I have a question for the halak. So the people who don't have a hair, what they gonna do?
Yeah, like me. Yeah. So people who don't have hair, what is the solution? So normally I tend to grow my hair before a month before we leave for Hajj, but for another 11 months after that. So the requirement is, I think most people have a little bit of hair on the men's side, but otherwise nails. Nails can be you can cut your nails, right? For women, a little bit of clipping of the hair is sufficient.
So here does the same rule apply that you have to do sa'i on the same day as Tawaf and Salat?
Yes. Does sa'i have to be performed at the same time as same day as Tawaf and Salat of Tawaf? Yes.
Is shaving of the head compulsory?
Is shaving of the head compulsory? No. Not compulsory, but highly recommended for your first Hajj especially. Right? Yes.
The recommendations that we talked about for the Tawaf or Umrah, the same applies.
The recommendations, obligations for Tawaf in Umrah and the Tawaf of Hajj, identical. All the rules are identical. That's why I'm not going to go through them again. They're identical. Okay. Tawaf al-Nisa. One second. Tawaf al-Nisa. One thing to remember is that some people, people have this misconception that if I am performing this Hajj, let's say for my marhum grandfather, okay, the restriction on intimacy is not on him. Restriction of intimacy is on you, right? Therefore, even if you are performing this Hajj for marhum grandfather or grandmother, you have to perform your Tawaf al-Nisa and 2 rakat salat, otherwise that restriction is on you until that obligation is fulfilled. Yes?
For halak, is it you have to shave completely or down to 1 or 2 millimeters?
If halak, do you have to shave completely or do you trim it down to like a millimeter? If you trim it down to a millimeter, that's not halak. That is taqsir, right? Halak means to the scalp, okay? And there are we can talk about that when we get to Makkah, inshallah. There are barbers who are there. They use new blades every single time. You ask them to use a new blade. You can see them opening up the wrapper and new blade, and alhamdulillah, we have not had any issues. Okay. Last couple of slides. 11th and 12th nights, the obligation is to remain in the city of Mina for Mabit for half the night. On the 11th night and the 12th night. Either first half or second half. Maghrib until the first half of the night, or second half from around midnight approximately till Fajr. Either one or both, but at least half the night on both nights on 11th and 12th. And then on the 11th day and the 12th day, there is a requirement to stone the Jamarat, all 3 of them on these 2 days. The first, Ula, Wusta, and Aqaba, all 3 of them, 7 pebbles each on both of those days. And that is in a nutshell the arkan of Hajj. 13 rituals of Hajj: the wearing of Ihram, the wuquf at Arafah on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah from Dhuhr till Maghrib, Muzdalifah that night of the 10th of Dhul Hijjah until sunrise for men. On the day of Eid, 3 requirements: Rami, stoning 1 Jamarat; Qurbani, which is the slaughtering of the animal; and halaq or taqsir in the case of ladies on the day of Eid. Then the obligations that can be performed at any other time: Tawaf of Hajj, the 2 rakat salat that follows, sa'i, Tawaf al-Nisa, the 2 rakat salat that follows Tawaf al-Nisa, and also then the staying in Mina, Mabit, on the 11th and the 12th of Dhul Hijjah for half the night, a minimum of half the night, and then also the stoning of the Jamarat on both of those days until the day of Dhuhr, until the time of Dhuhr on the 12th of Dhul Hijjah when you are in Mina, and then we are ready to leave. When you're ready to leave at the Dhuhr time on the 12th of Dhul Hijjah, assuming you have completed your other Tawaf and Sa'i and Tawaf al-Nisa, Alhamdulillah, your Hajj obligations have been completed. Inshallah, that will be a blessed day when we'll meet in Mina. Tawaf al-Wida'. Tawaf al-Wida', farewell Tawaf is not wajib. It's not wajib, recommended. Okay.
Are we going to do these rituals as a group or is like?
Yeah. Are we doing these rituals as a group? It's not logistically possible to do it as a group. However, when we go for Umrah, we take people in small groups, but people tend to split up because it's not practical to have 15 people do Tawaf together and Sa'i together. But we have small groups with leaders that will take the groups and have designated meeting spots to complete their rituals of Umrah. Yes.
The stone on the 11th and 12th, is that 7 stones each as well? Or is that
Stoning on the 11th and 12th of Dhul Hijjah is at 7 stones each, yes. 7 pebbles for each of the 3 Jamarat. So you're 21 pebbles on that day, 21 on the 11th, 21 on the 12th. So you have used 42 pebbles on those 2 days, and you used 7 the day before, so 49. But you pick 70. The reason why you pick 70 is you have an extra 21 left. In the event that you have to stay there on the 13th of Dhul Hijjah, and there are circumstances under which you may require to stay on the 13th of Dhul Hijjah, then you have another obligation for 21. That's why you carry the extra. Okay, there are a few other slides, but I'm not going to go over them. I will because in the interest of time, I will let you listen to the presentation. This covers not necessarily a masail of Hajj, but we can deal with them after as well. It deals with masail related to praying while traveling. It also deals with the masail related to, and you can view the slides, masail related to praying on the plane, and praying of full versus qasr salat in Medina and Makkah. We're praying full. We have the ability or the permission to pray full. The rules of Salatul Jama'ah in the Haramain. Okay, Sayyid Sistani says we have to recite Furada with the niyat of Furada. You stand shoulder to shoulder, but you recite with the intention of Furada. Agha Khamenei allows praying of Jama'ah in the Haramain. Prayer times, the only thing to remember is we have a difference of opinion with our brothers and sisters of the Ahl Sunnah as far as Maghrib Salat timing is concerned. We pray approximately 15 minutes after. If there is a gap of 15 minutes between the time the Adhan is given and the time the Imam starts Salat, you're okay. Otherwise, you recite your Qada Salat and you have to pray Maghrib again. Other prayers, there's no issue. And as far as sajda is concerned, the question was, there is plenty of marble in Makkah, there's no problem. In Medina, you have to find a spot, okay, where the marble floor is exposed. And over the years, that space has become tighter and tighter. But if you go there early enough, you can find a spot where you can do sajda. You cannot do sajda on the carpet. So we will have prayer mats, etc., that are given to everybody that has a place where you can do your sajda. So you can take that musalla with you. But otherwise, if you get there early enough, you should have no problem finding a spot with marble. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. I'm still here in case there are questions after. We'll tackle them after, inshallah.